Good morning. I hope you're having as lovely and peaceful a Sunday morning as I'm having here. It's absolutely beautiful out. It's nice and still and quiet. So this week I want to borrow from the Hindu Proverbs. This is a religion that's very difficult to, well, yes and no, actually. It's kind of, especially for a Western mindset or from a Western perspective, to curtail this entire religion into just one little episode here for a few minutes and actually get the gist of any of it. And then again, the gist of it is so simple and so pure and so straightforward that it's just so elementary at the same time. So I think it's just, the perspective is so different. Nonetheless, let's talk about human perception. Human perception. I think that's a good place to open. And so that'll bring us to the story of the 6 blind men and the elephant. There were 6 blind men. They came upon an elephant in the jungle or forest. They knew it was an elephant because they had been told that it was an elephant by others. And one of the men touched the elephant's legs and he said, "The elephant is like a pillar." And another man touched it and he said, "It's like a husking basket." And he had, of course, touched its ears. And another of the blind men, he touched another part, and so did another, and they all came to different conclusions about what is an elephant like. And I think that speaks volumes to how quickly we believe that we know a thing just because we know a portion of it or know it from a individual vantage point, and how wrong that can be. Similar story, the story of the frog in the well. There was a frog in a well. He lived in this well all of his life. He was born in this well. He probably will live out this current mortal life there. And one day along came a traveling frog who had come some distance, and he was curious, so he hopped up on the well and he looked in and he saw the other frog and he spoke to him and addressed him. He said, "Good morning. I'm a traveler. I've come quite a ways and I see you here and I would just like to extend you a top of the day." So the frog in the bottom of the well looked up and he said, "Oh, well, how nice to meet someone different from a faraway place. What is it like where you are from?" And the frog at the top of the well said, "I come from the sea. I was born there. I spent most of my life there. I live in the sea." And the frog at the bottom of the well said, "The sea, is this a very large place? I've never heard of it." And the frog at the top said, "Yeah, oh yes, it's very, very big. Very, very big." So the frog at the bottom of the well, he spread himself out flat as far as he could, stretching out his limbs, become as expansive as possible. And he said to the frog at the top, "Is it this big?" And the frog at the top said, "Oh yes, oh my yes, much, much, much bigger, much bigger." So the frog at the bottom, hearing this, he darted from one side of the well all the way to the other side of the well, and then gesturing to the distance in between, he said, "Is it this big?" And the frog at the top said, "Oh, heavens yes, it's so much larger than that. It seems practically endless, it's so big." The frog at the bottom of the well, hearing this, he said, "Go away, you are a liar. I have no need for liars. Go away. Nothing could be so big." Human perception. Just because you haven't experienced a thing yourself doesn't mean it isn't there. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Doesn't mean it isn't true. You know, I saw a recent video that a gorilla brother had put up. Clearly he'd lost his temper, and I think this was the point of the video, that he had this side And he sometimes wrestles with the disposition and just maintaining an even or a more even keel or a balance, or just maintaining peace within himself. So let's talk about anger for a moment. A great teacher was walking along, and he had a bunch of students with him, and they came upon a riverbank. And it appeared to be a family at the riverbank, and they were bathing and washing themselves in the river. But they were arguing. There was some disagreement, and they were screaming and hollering at each other. It was a very heated argument. And so the teacher looked to his students, his pupils, and he said, "Why do they scream so?" And one pupil said, "Well, they're mad. They're angry, and it's only natural to scream and holler when you're angry." None of the other students particularly could agree with that. They all had a different opinion, a varying opinion. So another student remarked, "They're all making so much noise that maybe they want to scream louder than the next, that their voice can be heard." And the teacher said, Well, let's think about this. When you first meet someone and you feel an attraction to that person, maybe eventually this person would become your spouse. When you're first drawn to this person, how do you speak to that person? How do you speak to each other? You speak respectfully, you speak quietly, you speak gently, honorably. Then as you actually get to know each other and you do fall in love, and you're very close, then how do you speak to each other? What evolves? Maybe you share quiet, guarded moments, only designed for the two of you, so you may whisper. And you speak even more gently, and more caring, more compassionately, more kindly to each other. Then you get to know each other even better, and maybe you share a life together. Two of you live your lives together in the same household, maybe. And you spend years and years of this life together. You get to know each other so well, and you become so close that it almost seems you don't even have to speak aloud, that you automatically can feel and you know and you can sense what the other needs, what the other's feeling, where the other's heart or mind is at. And you share this bond. So with that in mind, maybe the reason that they yell and they are angry is because there's a great distance between them. And when there is a great distance, how do we communicate? We yell. And the last story I'll leave you with, there was a wise man. He was traveling and he came upon two households. One was a very wealthy man. Further down the road was a very poor man. So he went to visit with this poor man. And he was treated and welcomed with kindness and compassion and respect, of course, as visitors should be. And he saw that they didn't have very much at all, that they worked very hard. The man in the house worked very hard, and he didn't make very much money. They didn't have really any extra money for any luxuries. They had just enough food to go around, but yet they were eager to share. They had just enough wood to burn, to stay just warm enough to be okay and to survive, but yet they were incredibly happy, incredibly even, balanced, satisfied, glad that they were here together. And they shared love and they shared happiness, and they seemed to have a very peaceful existence. Then he went to visit with the wealthy man, his house, this huge estate. And though the wealthy man, he had so many spoils and riches that he could lavish upon a visitor to impress them, he seemed frustrated and aggravated and not at peace within himself at all. He was constantly worried with so much to manage. He had so many things on his mind, and how could he possibly expand his kingdom and have more? How could he fence more of his property in? Or how could he acquire more? Or how could he become even more comfortable and have even more luxurious things that people would look at and envy? And this was on his mind day and night. He had so much to care for, so much to manage. And he expressed to the wise man how difficult it was to have so much wealth to care for. And the wise man said to him, but yet you have all this wealth. And every day you struggle and you live in turmoil and you have no peace. And yet the man down the way, your neighbor, he has very little. He has no wealth. He's a very poor man, a very poor family. And yet they have peace and tranquility and they're extremely happy. They have a wondrous life. And the wealthy man said, how can that be? So after the wise man had departed, the wealthy man thought about it. And he saw that his neighbor was very poor and that they struggled. But yet they managed to burn a small fire every night. They managed to cook some food every night, a little grain or whatever they prepared and baked. They managed to eat and get by. And he saw that, yes, they seemed to be very happy. So one night, maybe he was feeling guilty because of all his wealth while his neighbor went without so many things in his eyes. Or maybe he just wanted to tempt the neighbor and see if he was truly happy. But he crept up to the poor man's house, and he quietly opened the door and he threw some money in, and he departed. And he watched. The next day came and went. That night, they didn't burn any fire. He didn't smell anything cooking. The following night came, and again, there was no fire in the poor man's house to keep them warm or to bake or to cook or to feed them. The wealthy man was perplexed at this. And so he sought out the wise man. He said to him, how can this be? He admitted to him what he had done, confided in him. And he said, let us go and see what has become. So they went to the house. And they asked him. He said to the poor man, I must admit, I saw that you were happy, but I saw that you were poor. And so I didn't really understand this, so I threw some money into your door the other night, and yet now you have a fire in your home to stay warm. Now you don't even seem to bake or even eat anything. And the poor man said, we saw that we now had $9, and we thought about it, and I knew that if I worked really, really hard, within a few days or within a week, I should be able to compile another $1 if I don't spend any money, if I don't go and get any wood to burn, if I don't go and buy any grain. If we go without eating and we suffer some, I could probably acquire another $1 to put to that 9 and make it even 10. So hopefully you recognize the moral of that story, that parable, and that Hindu religion is largely about detachment and not possessing things, not being tied or enslaved to possessions. And even in life, not even in life, it's about living in the now. There's a story of a man who slipped and fell off of the edge or side of a mountainous terrain that he was traversing, and he slipped and he fell, lost his footing. He was frightened. There was a tiger nearby on the ledge, the same ledge. As he fell, he was certain he was going to die, but there was a rope that a previous climber had left there, tied to something above, and he managed to somehow catch hold of the rope, and he was hanging from this rope. And above him was the tiger leaning over the edge, who was actually now beginning to gnaw at the rope. Below him was jagged rocks and certain physical death. And then he looked in front of him, and growing out, there was an outcropping of strawberries. The most delicious strawberries he had ever imagined. At least they appeared that way. So he plucked them off and he tasted them, and they were so delicious and so good. And they were indeed the greatest, sweetest, best strawberries he had ever tasted. So basically, the Hindu faith is ultimately about living now, living in the now, and not being tied to anything, not even tied to the future, not even tied to the past, just living now. So take from that what you will. Hopefully find something in it positive, and maybe you may even be motivated to do a search and find out more, look for more of these parables. Just something to think about, hopefully. And that's it for me, because I have to get out of here and head to Retro Fitness, because it is Sunday. So have an awesome day. I hope you've had a wonderful weekend, and I will see you again soon.